Tessin.
Ryan.
How you doing? All right?
Fab.
Welcome to our show.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
We talk a lot about, obviously being construction on this podcast, we talk about things that aren't that necessarily obvious. So things that definitely affect us from a different angle, not just what happens on a building site, things like that. But before I waffle on, why don't you introduce yourself and tell viewers who you are, how we know each other, and what you do.
Awesome. So I'm Tehsin Khan, founder of GrowthPad. We do niche taxes, such as research and development tax relief and capital allowances. And how do we know each other? We went to school together.
Yeah.
I think I was a year above you.
Yeah.
For quite some time. And then we met again at football Sunday league.
Yeah.
So I think once, I might have still been at uni. I can't remember.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I used to travel down to play football on Sundays.
Yeah, credit to you, because you actually did travel quite a fair.
Yeah, from Manchester.
Yeah, just to come back, it was like fair play.
I needed to. It's like therapy, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to say it's everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just kicking a bag of air, what some people refer it to. It's that camaraderie, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think you also noticed every week I came back, probably like a pound heavier.
Why is that then?
Burgers.
I love it. Right, all right. So, yeah, because we go way back.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it, how life happens? Because we actually grew up very close.
I knew your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You went to school with our dads.
Yeah.
He's in Australia now.
Yeah.
You know, full resident, everything he's done. He's out of there.
Aussie.
Yeah, he's full blown Aussie. He did the he did the Cockney kind of like 10-year stint, and then his Yorkshire accent started turning into a Cockney Yorkshire kind of like muffle, and then obviously emigrating over to over to down under the Australian sort of like narrative. He moved to Doncaster, Melbourne. He's like, what are you doing? Home from home or what? But now his accent is a bit Yorkshire / Cockney / Aussie. It's a bit like, what? Who are you, bro? But yeah, we do go way back. It's fair to say we've got a good history.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I appreciate it, and I sort of like treasure that, because those relationships, they're lifelong. They're built off no business, no motive. It's just good people. It's that kind of.
When you play football with someone and you're in the same team, because it was Sunday league at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you do build that bond, and you build that, I don't want to say protection as well of that other person. You care for that person.
Yeah.
They're your teammate, and they kind of become your teammate for life. Like, if I saw one of my ex-managers, I still call them Gaffer.
Yeah, it is.
Like, that's just
weird,
the way it is. So, yeah, like, because we got that, I feel we're quite relaxed around each other. It's
a weird. Formal. It's really nice. I appreciate it. And I treasure it, because it's that bond. Like you said, there's that connection that's forever there, and it was built from. You know what I absolutely love is that you didn't. There was no motive or anything. It was purely based off the back of. If there was frustration, let's say you weren't kicking the ball to each other, your natural self came out. You know, and that was personal. But in a team environment, you know, and you could be yourself, knowing it weren't negative or it wasn't anything. It was because we was fighting for the same goal.
It's just football. Like, I don't mind getting criticised on the pitch.
Yeah.
Like, especially by my teammates. It's like, I must have done something wrong. It's fine.
We all do something wrong.
It doesn't bother me.
I love it. So, yeah, we move forward, and then it's fair to say, and it's easy for me to say, you built a phenomenal career. And you've had a lot of success. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, from what you was doing at uni, where it took you? So
I started uni doing neuroscience and AI. I always had this dream of becoming a scientist, helping cure Alzheimer's, all that sort of thing. And then I got to uni, did a lot of lab work, cutting up animals. And I spoke to a few people who I met who were scientists or knew family members who were working in labs. And they were like, it's just boring. You're stuck in a lab, like basically 9 to 5, just cutting up animals. It's like, you know, some labs don't even have windows. You're just stuck. And doing that every single day just gets a bit
tedious.
Yeah, and the pay wasn't great. Imagine you're trying to cure like a disease and you're not getting paid that well. So that was in my head, and I was thinking I need to do something else. And I think that also but that also facilitated me like not enjoying it anymore. So I dropped out. Just dropped out.
That's it. Cold turkey. Done.
Second year.
I'm finished.
A few months in, I just dropped out.
So
no one was happy about it.
I was gonna say, how did family take that?
Oh, not well.
That's deep, because that's a lot of investment right there.
Yeah, so basically let's call it 1.5 years of money just
Money and time.
Thrown away.
God.
Well, time didn't matter then. Like,
do you know what's really relevant about this is that how many people genuinely do that and get stuck in that rat race and go down an avenue with good intention, but actually at heart it's not really what they want to do.
I met a few who did the first year or part with the first year, and they changed their mind on what they want to do. Some transferred in that year, some waited till the following year to change course.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we left.
Yep, left. Came back to Doncaster from Manchester, and then worked at Nationwide, at the mortgage processing place. So I was there.
I remember that stint.
Yeah, that's good. I enjoyed that. It's a good.
What's going through my mind right now is thinking, God, that was a while ago.
Yeah, this is probably 2004.
Jeez.
So, so worked in basically helping process mortgages for Nationwide, and I was trying to figure out what my next step is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something that was more practical in real life. With neuroscience at that time, it was a lot of theory work because it wasn't advanced as it is now. They were just learning new things every day. So I got to a course, I learned something. The week later, oh, what we taught you last week doesn't apply because of this new research, but we're still examining you on that. So it was all theory work. So I wanted to do something practical. So I looked at accounting, I think
Bless you.
marketing, and a few more things. I spoke to a few people, including my cousin, and my cousin is an accountant. He's a chartered accountant at that point, and naturally he's like, yeah, do accountancy. It's amazing. It's amazing. Going to auditing.
Some boy. Was he laughing when he was telling you?
I don't know. He's probably still laughing now.
On a beach somewhere.
So went back to uni to do accounting. And then the third year, we had a module in tax. And I was like, oh, this taxing is actually quite fun.
It's quite big though, isn't it?
Compared to auditing. Tax was fun. We only did like 2 modules. It's just personal tax and corporation tax. It's just, It was quite simple. So once I graduated, I wanted to work in tax. And this is 2008. So I've graduated in, I think it's May or June.
What a time.
And the banks start going bust. So I'm looking for this job, and I'm that's when I started looking into like having a positive mindset.
Yeah.
Ignoring things you can't control, and just kind of being stuck in like having tunnel vision in. This is a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Like to apply for jobs is a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Wake up, get ready for work, start at 9 to 5. You can finish at 5 and do whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah.
So from 9 to 5 for about 3 months, I applied for jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
3 months.
About 3 months.
What kind of jobs were you applying for?
Tax.
Just basically on tax.
Just tax. Oh, across the country. I didn't care where it was.
Wow.
Up and down the country.
Why tax? Just off your...
Because I enjoyed it. So I kind of tried to follow a natural path. Like some people will do accounting and go into something completely different.
Yeah.
I wanted to stay in accounting because to me that was a natural thing to do. And I enjoyed tax. So I looked at tax jobs. I will say like probably 98% of the jobs were tax. On days when I was a bit, it's not happening, I might have applied for a few audit jobs. I
Fail safe.
Yeah. Well, luckily I had 3 interviews, I think. PwC Reading, Bentley Jennison in Harrogate, and Little John in Canary Wharf.
Oh.
And
big boy stuff.
Yeah, and that's the job that I got. So
straight into it, deep end.
Just relocated to London and worked there for 3 years, learning predominantly private client stuff. So like personal tax, a bit of inheritance, a lot of trust work, a lot of residency work. We worked a lot with footballers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but got quite a few free tickets to matches.
Just happens.
To new agents. That's how my career started. Then it progressed passed some exams, all that kind of stuff. Got homesick, came back to Doncaster.
Again?
Yep. Then worked for a local firm just to earn some money and just figure out my next move. Went to Grant Thornton in Kettering. Again, worked in private client, but I worked with the London team based in Kettering. So basically got a Kettering salary.
Yeah, right.
But worked with London clients. And it wasn't...
No commission, no?
No, nothing, no.
Tax
That was fun to a certain degree, but that wasn't the job that I wanted. I really wanted to work in advisory.
Yeah.
And luckily my next role was advisory at EY in Birmingham. That's probably the job that changed a lot in terms of like personal skills and ambitions, and kind of made me want to try something myself down the line, because I didn't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. Like, it just was, I wasn't going to.
Where did it come from? But before we jump there,
Yeah.
I don't want to jump the stick. So, Birmingham now.
Mm-hmm.
What next from Birmingham?
So a few things happened whilst at Birmingham. So they had a relationship, EY, with banks across the country. So any ultra high net worth or high net worth person that needed tax work done or some sort of guidance, they get introduced to our team. Our managers mainly dealt with that. But one day my manager was ill. And I was like, I'll jump into that. It sounds like fun. I don't know why that day, but I just felt like doing it. Jumped in, and it was essentially a sales call stroke general tax advice, and it could be asking me anything.
Big boy pants are on doing it.
I was so nervous.
Would you?
I was so nervous.
What were you thinking?
I was thinking, don't be nervous. Just breathe, a few heavy breaths, jump into it. And when you're in the call, you're in the zone. I can't remember what the advice was. I can't remember if I won the work. I can't remember anything about the call. But all I remember was I came out of it. I really enjoyed it.
Winning! Tess, you've lost us everything.
What happened to that guaranteed client?
We should find out. If that was you, Richard.
So that gave me like the first step into like sales.
Right. And how did that?
A consultative sales role, essentially. And I requested more of those types of meetings. So started doing more of those, started winning work.
Did you get more?
Yeah.
Well, it must have worked then.
Yeah, so they put me into it. I was winning work. Then I was giving it to juniors. They'd do the work. I'd review it, make some changes to it, give it back. They'd finish it off, sign it off, get paid $3,000 to $6,000 per piece of work.
Done.
It was good. And then also I was winning work for the departments.
Right.
That was fun.
A lot of success there then.
Sorry?
A lot of success there.
Yeah, I think I always say from a personal development side, I learned a lot there. And if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be doing this now. Because it gave me the confidence just to speak about tax on a more general, high level view instead of like going into the nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was amazing.
Well, kudos to you for that, because that wasn't something you fell into. That's something that you actually went and pushed for.
It wasn't something I saw and I thought, oh, one day it'd be amazing. It was literally, it was on the day, like, I'll try it. Let's just see how it goes.
I love that.
Whilst I was there, I got asked to write some articles for some tax journals. So it was extra money. I think it was like £400 per article.
Yeah?
And I could write an article in one evening. So 400 quid back in...
Ching.
Yeah, it's money. So wrote a few articles. And apparently they loved it. So then they asked me to write a book. And they was like, we'll give you $6,000 to write this book on residency, tax residency. Like,
You getting any royalties off this book?
No.
So they own it. You wrote it. What's the lesson there?
No, it wasn't residency. The first one was... it was property.
Wow.
The first one was property. And that did amazing for them. They like...
So you got a one-off kick. Thanks for that.
But it took me like 3 weeks to write it.
No royalties.
No. I just saw $6,000. I was like, wow. $6,000. I'll take that. Think about it.
The shiny penny.
Yeah, think about it. Like...
Yeah, that's how my life. Obviously, everything's relevant, right?
Yeah.
That would have been more than, what, 100 quid a copy? I don't know, whatever the royalties would have been, but...
No, they sold a lot. No, they sold a lot. A lot. They sold a lot.
The royalties now feel a little bit better.
They sold so well, they asked me to write a second book. So the second one was R&D. No. Yeah,
But,
second one
how
was
many books did you write?
I've written 3. So I did one on.
Do you own the rights to these books?
No, so it's all. It was FLM Indicator. They've been brought out by some French company, I think, last year. We just edited another version. So somebody else wrote it. We reviewed it and signed it off, basically saying it was all correct.
Royalties?
We did that. No royalties. That was.
What's going on?
That's just reputation. So I can say to people,
I like that,
we've
though.
written a book.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean,
I've just done one. I'm not going to go into it now. I'll send it to you. It's not on tax.
It's not on tax.
No. So a lot of success there, then. Personal success in terms of development. The monetary things, whatever, right? That's not the primary thing there. But so how did we go from there to where we are today? Not necessarily today, because there's a bit in between.
So EY, I got headhunted to work at a firm called Markel Tax. They just did R&D. Imagine going from having to know essentially like 6 or 7 books that are the size of Bibles, like paper thin, and having to be able to navigate those conversations to only having to navigate one chapter. It's easier, isn't it? So R&D was really easy to pick up, So I just picked it up in a few weeks. I was on the road by myself, like with hardly any training in a few weeks, had my own portfolio. And about 8 months in, it might have been less, I thought, I want a bit of flexibility. My wife had a kid, and I just wanted more flexibility in my life. I didn't want to travel 40 minutes to go to a job. So I decided to just...
Solo?
Yeah, so just literally decided on one day, that's it. Handed my notice in. Said to myself, I'm going to do this properly. I'm not going to steal any clients. I'm not going to approach any of them because it's not the right thing to do. And just started off with 0 clients.
Ballsy.
Yeah.
Welcome to entrepreneurship.
Had 6 months of savings.
Yeah.
So I thought, I've got a bit of leeway. And let's just see what can happen from this. So that's how it started.
And I know your journey.
Yeah.
From that moment, obviously, to today. It's not only is it inspiring, it's quite impressive. You know, we've also got a sole business in the middle of that. But you're now into the big wide world of business. Like I say, you've kind of gone into entrepreneurship because it was a lifestyle change, not a business goal change, which when I speak to quite a lot of people, that tends to be quite a familiar kind of like reason why people end up converting across. But let's dive deep then into some specifics. If we're going to talk today about R&D, now to me and you, that's 3 characters. To other people, it's a little bit more than that. Explain R&D, and then also can we touch on capital allowances?
Yeah, sure. So research and development tax relief, it's basically a form of funding that works through the corporation tax system. So you have to be subject to corporation tax claim. And what it is, if you do something that's advancing technology or science, and you're finding it difficult to do, and there's like scientific or technological boundaries to do the thing, then you qualify for this relief. And if you spend money on things like staff, subcontractors, software, consumables like materials, utilities, also I think data now, and like things associated with data, you can now recoup those costs through the corporation tax system. So I won't say that companies should rely on it, but it's an extra hand, it's extra help for when you are trying to create something that's a bit more cutting edge.
So give us an example, because I know, but for the benefit of the listeners, obviously our listeners tend to be a bit more construction background, property background, things like that. From our perspective, we're looking at AI and how we can incorporate that within our business. We heavily rely on software to bring sites to consumers, to customers, wherever they are. So there is an element of smaller gauge of R&D that we can obviously engage on. But give us an example of a typical use case of a good example of where someone might not know that R&D could apply, but they'd be completely oblivious because it's not their mainstream business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So it could be that you are in property and you are creating something in AI. So it's not a core part of your business in making a building, but you could be creating a tool that maybe helps you manage something better, or it could help with estimating development costs, or might even help take out some of the elements that an architect might help with.
Yep.
So those things they do exist. And again, we need to establish, okay, does this thing from a technology point of view, not the actual what it does, but under the bonnet, like what does it look like? How do you compare it to what's already out there? Is it faster? Does it just not even exist from a technology point of view? What were the difficulties in creating it? Like, one difficulty is that there's no documentation out there on the internet of how to do this because it's such a new thing, which for AI, that seems to be the case.
Yeah.
And if someone is, let's say they've got a qualification in AI tech and they've been working in the industry for a few years, if they find it difficult to do, they're scratching their head, we don't know how to do this. We need to like have a full-blown project into this.
Yeah.
Those are the type of boxes that you need to tick to self-qualify for.
Well, this is real life right now, isn't it? Because we're seeing it, and we've all had a play on the the different softwares like ChatGPT and there's DeepSeek or whatever DeepSeek. They're all out there, and I'm a firm believer of leave the experts to do the expert's job, right? But it's good to have a little play and understand, have a little bit of a dabble on how powerful these things are. And we've looked at it for cost exercises. So obviously been in an accountancy kind of background, you know that costs are costs, figures are figures. So if they exist, which they should, labour rates, material rates, overhead profits, so to speak, then really the process should be streamlined because you've got the front end, which is the estimation, then you've got the back end, which is the reality. That can then, in comparison with like say, book of bonds and things like that in the construction world, we should be able to formalise that process. So we've been working on that in the background for something that works with our software. So yeah, it is quite interesting that people might be falling into the realms of R&D claims, of which if you are, definitely reach out. However, they probably won't know about it because they're just dabbling and don't think that it's even a thing. So it's the awareness thing for me that really needs to be sort of like pushed.
Yeah. So what I say is accountants should know about it, not know how to claim it or how to do the work, but right. So how I see accountants is they're the front line to helping their client with anything finance related, at least. I think personally it's a bit more, but let's just keep it at least finances.
Yeah.
When you become an accountant, firstly, what is an accountant? Anyone can be an accountant. It's just a name. To be a chartered accountant, you need to pass some qualifications. Those qualifications have like 2 modules maybe in tax. How much can you learn in 2 modules? Not that much. And also, there's so many different taxes and so many different niches, you can't learn everything. So they might be able to do, well, they can do simple corporation tax returns and personal tax and maybe some simple planning around like remuneration and company cars and that sort of thing. But that's where it seems to end. So there's a reason why there's people that work in niche taxes. There's a reason why R&D tax is part of corporation tax.
We look at so my perception of the R&D is that it's one of those, let's say you've got, keeping it relevant, you've got Xero, right? Well, Xero will have a bolt-on package and it'll be a specialist within a certain subject. Well, R&D is one of those bolt-on packages where at any one time you might be able to bolt it in and then remove that subscription if you don't need it because you're not doing something. Mm-hmm. But it's a necessity if you are, because it's a specialist. Yeah. Whereas your accountants need to have the overall kind of like the umbrella of it if you want. Yeah. But they're not the specialists. No. Unless they just specialise in criteria.
Exactly. So they should be able to know like which questions to ask and identify whether, we think you might qualify for R&D because you seem to be doing something different.
So I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Would a normal accountant, and answer this honestly now, would a normal generalised accountant pick that question up to clients on AI today?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
And I think that's the wake-up call. I kind of guessed that because there is that element of reality check. There is a fear of can we or can we not? You know, even from an accountant's perspective, they're not specialists in R&D. So why would you go and shout to your clients who you're supposed to be acting in their best interests of, hey, R&D here might cover this. You might want to, you know, explore it or whatever. If they're not the specialists, they're not going to say that. Really, how's that work then from your perspective? Is that your job to make the awareness, or should accountants be the ones to create that awareness?
So it depends how you look at it. So I can control what I do. I can control what our firm does. So we go out and we look at it from a point of view. We know accountants are busy. We know they're not charging enough. So they can't hire enough staff. So they're working long hours. So they're stressed. We know all that. So with that comes, okay, did they have time to learn about R&D? Probably not. So it's up to us to go in there and talk to them and educate them and make the process as simple as possible. It could be just like, this is what R&D is.
Yeah.
You might not remember it all, but here's a checklist. And this is the checklist you should incorporate with your client onboarding or annual tax reviews.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, what's an annual tax review? And then
That's exactly what they say.
and then you realize, okay, I think the problem we're trying to solve might be a bit bigger than just R&D.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it more of, okay, we need to help accountants charge better,
Yeah.
streamline the processes better, have the right people in, help them, put them in a position where they can grow?
I think what we need to understand as well is you, like yourself, you fell into business because you wanted a lifestyle change. So what you don't know, you don't know. Well, you're fortunate to be from an accounting background, okay? Let's use us, for example. We're a construction background, so we're not from an accountancy background. And I fell into business because I was failed by others, and I just wanted, you know, that typical superhero, I will do this better kind of thing. And off you do. You start into it, and then you start and realise, ooh, I've built something here. Ooh, I need help here. Ooh, who do I turn to? Those questions start coming. But again, we don't know what we should be asking because we don't know. We're not the experts. So you get hit with it when it comes. So when the first thing you do as a self-employed tradesman is get a bookkeeper. Well, that's not an accountant. And you learn that lesson the hard way because we want to get a cheap because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Whereas the reality, it should be the opposite. Pay for what you're going to get because they'll save in the long run. So really, yeah, the costs of the accountancy practice should go up because there's that many different areas of specialisms in the industry that we don't even have a clue about. One of them being R&D. The second one being capital allowances.
Yep.
What are they?
So capital allowances, they've existed in one form or another for hundreds of years. It's been around, I think it's called wear and tear relief back in like the 1800s or whatever. But then around 1945, I think it became in the legislation, it became known as capital allowances. So it's evolved since then. So it's been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
So capital allowances is tax relief when you spend money on assets, on capital. So when you buy machinery, if you buy like a laptop, like all this stuff, like the screen, these are assets. So these will be classed, you'll claim capital allowances on these in the tax computation. Now, where we come into it is, this is an analogy that all capital allowance people use, by the way. So let's say if you got a building, a property, and you tip it upside down, you probably heard this, yeah. And whatever doesn't fall out, that's the stuff we're looking to claim on.
Yeah.
Because that's the stuff that accountants will miss. We help identify those things using a surveyor, using like certain databases that not everyone has access to.
Yeah.
It's a quite a high fee subscription for it. And using someone who's an expert in capital allowances. We identify those and say, hey, Mr. Property investor or business person, you've missed out on 150K worth of additional costs that your accountants miss. You want to put this through?
That's a large number.
Yeah.
For example. So why this is relevant to us is this happens more often than people know. So buying an old, say, commercial building that hasn't had capital allowance relief on it, it's not been claimed already, you're not only negotiating the purchase price, but you're actually inheriting that claim right there. And that can be worth, like I said, tens of thousands.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be small, but it might be worth tens of thousands depending on the scale of the project. And because your typical property investor could be from any kind of background, it don't have to be account. It could be any. It could be a doctor, surgeon, someone who's not well versed in the industry, but they are investing their money. It's important that they are then made aware, because how many times have you come across a property transaction that somebody wasn't aware that there was capital allowances available?
Right. So when we started the capital allowance team, I was mainly looking at refurbs, refitting, because I thought that's where most of the value lies for us.
Yeah.
Then I started speaking to lawyers, and then my colleague Chris started speaking to lawyers, and we realised that they were completing something called the Section 198 incorrectly. They'll put like a nominal number in there, either a 1 or a 2. And what that means is you only inherit like £1 or £2 worth of capital allowances. So let's say if you bought a building for 5 mil, let's say it had £1 million worth of embedded assets in there, that's 250k worth of savings. But the lawyers only put in £2. So you've missed out on 250k basically of savings. And
that's a bit of bill.
Decent size law firms in multiple offices.
Wow.
Doing it wrong.
Is that like a bit of a get your indent insurance out here?
Maybe I spoke to a litigator to see what the repercussions could be, and they could be quite big. So we started speaking to lawyers after rubbing my hands. Started speaking to lawyers, and now what we do is when a property's been when the contracts are drawn for a purchase of a commercial property, the lawyer will send us a contract. We will look at the terms and we will tell them the capital allowance clauses that they need to include in it. They'll do that. We also help them with their Section 198 to make sure that it's been completed properly, the right values are in there, and that sort of thing. So that's all covered, so no one's getting sued. The work's been done properly, and the buyer's purchasing the property with the capital allowances.
Yeah.
And because that comes through the seller, we naturally get the work from the buyer.
Yeah.
And we'll do a capital allowance claim once they've purchased it. So if you don't do the Section 198 properly, you've got 2 years to like get around it. Once those 2 years lapse, we've seen a few of those.
So we're literally walking away from tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands, depending on the size of the scheme.
Yeah.
That are right there, smack in front of our face. I think the question I kind of have, and this is probably one that viewers will ask this question, is like, how the hell are you supposed to know this? Where should you start? Because if lawyers are getting it wrong and they don't know to advise you because it's not their job, where does the education start? At what point do you say to the individual, hey, you're my go-to, can you ensure that this is right, that's right, and, you go from there? At what point should somebody identify that, are you the right guy that they should speak to first before buying? Yeah,
so if you've not worked with someone before, they're not going to come to us because they won't know about it. So we're speaking with accountants, letting them know this is the issue, and we're speaking with lawyers. Obviously, by getting to lawyers, we can streamline that process before sale, where the contracts are drawn up. So that gets us in kind of like before anything started. So to me, that's a good point to introduce us.
Yeah, they're going to kind of offer the advice.
Yeah.
Directly, because they're a necessity. You're not a necessity at the minute, given that. Yeah. However, you should be the necessity, but
they don't know.
They don't know to know. Yeah.
So, if you're a lawyer and you work in this sort of industry and you're dealing with Section 198s, I would say get in touch with me. I'm not just like hand on heart. You need to get in touch with us, and I'll introduce you to my colleague Chris. He'll go through the process of what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And that's just free. Like, we're not going to charge you for that because
I think that's a very nice thing you're doing, because like, if I'm a lawyer listening to this right now, I'm like going, ooh, I'm just going to check we're doing that right.
We had loads.
Really?
Loads. I'm talking 7 offices, like law firms, 7 offices, 8 offices.
You see, this is where it's like, it's not go negative there. This is like, hey, what you don't know, you don't know. And that is absolutely fine. Lawyers, they're going to keep an element of their practice in their lane. How would they supposed to know that? That's ultimately where you guys should partner up.
So apparently, yeah, they should do. Apparently, they rely on the accountants. The accountants rely on them. So,
Yeah, but accountants don't know about
blind leading the blind. So that's the issue.
Yeah, it is. I think that's the message that we sort of say like this all the time. We've got this thing in obviously construction and property is that it's about your team. I know the cliche phrase like power team, but I think it's hugely important that when you're vetting your accountant, when you're vetting your lawyer, when you're vetting your build teams, you're asking the relevant questions. And this is just one of those big tick boxes that you need. For me, by the sounds of all this, you're a vital part of the team. That's just because you're not necessarily the necessity, like to buy a house, you need a lawyer. You know, to start a business, you need to speak to an accountant. Well, at some point, what category do you fall under? Tax specialists?
Yeah.
Why aren't tax specialists a go-to must-have in business?
It's people that know about it. They just rely on the accountant, which I kind of understand. Because you trust your accountant.
You should trust your accountant.
Yeah, but your accountant
doesn't know what they don't know.
Yeah, so when you become a chartered accountant, you need to, there's a certain thing you need to adhere to. I forgot what it's called. But basically, you shouldn't get involved with stuff you don't understand. Like, you shouldn't do any work that you don't understand,
right.
Which is fair enough. But then you should be having conversations with experts in various different fields. You should have a network of experts. You should have a VAT expert, R&D, capital allowances, mergers and acquisitions. Like, the list goes on. Inheritance tax. Yeah. Like, I can go on for ages. There's loads. There's loads.
There's a lot, yeah.
Investment, EIS, SEIS. Like, we can go on for ages.
Imagine all the specialists.
Exactly, there's loads. That's why these people exist.
Yeah.
Just doing this one little thing. But important. So, in my opinion, an accountant should have a network of these people. And just a little thing out there, like, if you work with us, yeah, you get access to all these people. Because we've already built
Let's do it.
We've already built the network. I've been working in tax since 2008. So I already had that network.
Yeah.
Working with these people for ages.
You see, what's interesting is that this is something that evolves through time, right? I know you get your massive practices and things like that, but massive practices generally deal with large enterprises. You know, your SMEs coming through ranks, your property investors, your mainstream or high street retail businesses, any kind of small, medium enterprise, generally look at cost as an element as well. Well, really, I've noticed, again, James Ashford did this, didn't he? He flipped the industry on its head a little bit for the better, because really it does come back down to education. Really, we need to know, as uneducated people, what is expected. You can't just go to an accountant and assume they know all. But then equally, that accountant should have the confidence, because they're not going to lose business. They should build trust and say, hey, when you hire us, you're not just hiring us, you're hiring our army behind us. And they're all necessity. You might not need them all at any one time, but that they're ready for disposal. Yeah. I suppose that's really the build trust sort of like team that you need, isn't it? You don't really get that.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen in business. When you start a business, it's biased because you're an accountant.
Yeah.
How many, we've got mates, right? Mutual mates. How many of them do you know that have gone into business and they've gone to an accountant and they just come to you and go, yeah, Tess, what are you saying?
All the time. Even I'm not an accountant. And they still come to me and say, this is what my accountant's told me. Is it right? Is it wrong?
So there is an element of, there's distrust with that. And that's a shame that you shouldn't have that, should you?
So, big sigh. there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done. Like, James Ashford's done an amazing job to get us from where we were to where we are now.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot to be done. I lost my trail of thought. Completely gone, mate.
Stay there. So, because we can nip this bit out, it's fine. It's about the industry in it. We're changing what's going on, what is broken, what we need to fix.
Yeah.
So where were you going? We were talking about, don't worry, we'll edit this out. We were talking about what James Ashford has done.
Yeah.
People, mates, asking, and the system's broken. Obviously, they're not trusting their accountants.
Yeah.
What James Ashford's done, It has just changed a little bit. But there's a lot more to change, isn't there? So where were you going at that point?
Yeah, so I think the collaboration thing that accountants need to collaborate more with other accountants, because there might be some accountants that specialize in property, some might specialize in software, and they might have a client that comes to them and says, "Oh, I need a CFO," and they might not have the CFO in house, but they might know that an accountancy firm that does have that CFO.
You see, this is quite interesting because obviously in Create, as you know, we're doing a group structure right now, and we're just, Steve and I talking about it and looking to kind of get this in process now. But there's the list that you need to go through is endless, and we need to get our ducks in a row before we can even approach the specialists. Get some time in your diary, bro. But there comes a time where we, as the business owners, ask, internally, do we trust our accountants? And are they doing what's right for us? Because they don't want to lose business. But equally, it kind of needs to be replicated back, like going, like, if you don't look after our best interests, how can we continue business with you? So you really need to look after our best interests because we don't want this relationship to break. But we're not really seeing the advantages that the government actually incentivise.
Yeah. So should you talk about trust with accountants?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a believer in you trust someone until they break it. Some people have different philosophies, but that's how I see it. And part of that is you work with your accountant, they tell you X, Y, and Z, but you also have to do your own research on the side. You have to, because it's your business. It's your responsibility.
You are liable.
Yeah, you're liable. Even for the tax return that is submitted and prepared by your accountant, that you're liable for it.
Still your name,
so
right?
You just have to network with like-minded people. Just have to meet other business owners, talk, see what they're doing, because you'll pick up a lot. You'll learn how, they might tell you the actual numbers, but they'll tell you how to structure the company, and if they've created an investment vehicle, have they structured that sort of thing, what they've done to mitigate tax, and those little things. It's essentially still your responsibility to speak with other people and learn as much as you can. And that's a decent way to vet how good your accountant's doing.
Would you say it's wise to listen to the ones who shout the loudest on social media and they say, I'm a specialist in this and da-da-da-da, versus the ones who are completely quiet, introverted, and sticking to the traditional methods of just doing the do?
I think you keep an open mind. Just because someone's on social media doesn't mean they know what they're doing. So they might be good at marketing, but the delivery might not be amazing. So even if you speak to someone via social media, you see this, you think, oh, Tess is talking sense. I still want you to go Google,
do the due deal,
see who I am, see the reputation, ask to speak to some of my clients, some of the partners that we work with, and then work with us if you're happy to do so. So there's still an element of vetting. Don't just still go in blind because of what you've heard of social media.
That happens quite a lot, bro.
Yeah.
That happens quite a lot. All right, well, I think you've given us quite a good insight there. I think what I will say to viewers is, if you have got questions, things like that, definitely reach out to Tess, or get your details, we'll put them in the comments below, kind of thing.
Awesome.
Take advantage of the R&D conversation and the capital allowances, especially when it comes into property. Some of our clients ask us to jump in with refurbs, and one of our auto default questions back is, hey, were you aware that these things are available? Because when it comes to budgeting, it's all right squeezing down the build team because the pot's getting thinner, but yet our clients leaving things on the table. And I think that's the value add from our perspective here, definitely having you on. But listen, thanks for coming today. I think we've been quite inspired by what you've said. And then quiz, because we're all going to go back to accountants and say, hey, what's going on? But yeah, thanks for coming on today, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Nice one.